Oh, look, it's time for Bring It In Troops, little Zoom show. David Thorpe, how are you, sir?
I'm great. I am. I need to say that my mom turns 80 tomorrow. I know none of you will tell her that I said her name, but she's going to be 80 years old tomorrow. So I'm doing this for you, Mom. She doesn't listen anyway, but I'm thinking
Not
about
totally
you.
sure you did say her name.
Well, she's my mom.
Oh, your mom is her name. I got you.
Right.
Okay. Well, happy birthday, your mom. Okay, David, we have the most organized show in the history of Bring It In today. I'm pretty sure. The broad theme we're going to get to in the main course of the meal later on is the game has changed. Flopping, free throws, and threes are all down. Passing is not so great. We have some warm up, some hors d'oeuvres, if you will, including right off the top here. Oh, there's going to be dessert too. We got a little dessert at the end of the show. For an hors d'oeuvre, LeBron versus Jalen Green. The whole internet's excited about it. This is a 36-year-old man out racing a 19-year-old like super stud athlete for a dunk. He's almost double his age. How can this happen?
Well, the 36-year-old is still a marvelous athlete, to be sure. But this is really more about imagine you racing a 70-year-old, but you're not taking it very seriously.
No, I'm waxing that kid. I'm taking it seriously.
Well, that's the thing. Jalen Green wasn't. So Jalen Green, I just think this is my own opinion. I think that for anyone that doesn't understand, it was a long hit. I think DeAndre Jordan threw like a long hit ahead pass to LeBron, and Jalen Green was just getting back on defense. LeBron was recognizing, oh, I got to dunk here. I'm going to beat this young kid and go get myself a bucket. And what happens, Henry, too often is there's so many things going on in a rookie's life that first impulse is paused, it's delayed. Whereas the veteran recognizes that instant in time, I got an opportunity here. And so the veteran explodes. The rookie just kind of takes a stumbling step and then might recognize, oh boy, fire alarm bells going off. It's too late. This is a very short court. If it was a football game, you might have been able to catch up before the long bomb was thrown and caught. Basketball is too short. And it reminded me when I actually watched this play live, it reminded me of the famous play. We've written about this before. Jump ball, end of Celtics, Cavaliers, Eastern Conference Finals, the last game, game 7. And the Ilgauskas tips it. LeBron should have it. LeBron moved to the ball. Paul Pierce raced and dove as if his life depended on it. Got possession. Celtics won. And LeBron, I think, has learned urgency over the course of his time and experience. That play, more than anything, showed him what urgency felt like. He didn't have to get the ball. Paul Pierce did. And in this case, it was LeBron being the Paul Pierce, like, ooh, I got a dunk here. Boom, he exploded. Whereas Jalen Green didn't even realize what was going on until all of a sudden LeBron James is reverse dunking with 2 hands. And Green didn't even put up a fight. It just was too fast for him. He'll learn from that, maybe, hopefully.
I'm also like this is super unfair to Jalen Green. We've selected the most embarrassing second of the game, right? And now we're talking like generally Jalen Green runs slowly and generally LeBron runs intensely. Like LeBron fucking loafs it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. We're just not picking that clip, but if you, whatever's happening, you can measure his heart rate, his blood flow, his muscular expenditure. Like LeBron has super peak moments for under a minute a game. Everybody, this is true, right? And he picked one. You could see he was behind Jalen, so he got a little sneaky advantage, right? He's like, ooh, he doesn't know that we're gonna have an all-out moment right now, right? And LeBron decided to have an all-out moment, and it worked like a charm. I think that's also Jalen just didn't know that it was an all-out moment because basketball's filled with 70% effort moments. It just is. That's just how the game goes, and you have to meet out your effort or whatever. And and actually, and the one other little thing I'd say is that's right. It's right to meet out effort, right? It'd be crazy to be 100% balls to the wall. You wouldn't last 5 minutes. So here's one where the efforts were very mismatched, and LeBron was smart to pick that moment. It worked, but I don't know that they're generally that indicative of players. Who would win, you think, if Jalen knew that it was race time? If they lined up to do a half court sprint, who would win that out of those two, you think?
Well, I think Jalen would win, but more importantly than that, he wouldn't even have to win. He just needed to change his he lost the 2-foot race.
Right.
In our gym, we work on the 2-foot races because if you win those first 2 feet, I used to do first 5 feet. but in the NBA, it's down to 2 feet. When I was a high school coach, it was first 5 foot. You just cut his path off. Just get in front of him. Like he could have gotten his way. He had the head start.
Right.
And I'm sure he would have if you did it again and replayed the whole thing. I think Green gets the ball 10 times out of 10. 10 times out of 10. Yeah. You put it exactly right. This is the difference between veterans and rookies. It's the recognition of when it's time to have urgency.
Right.
It
was a good spot. Yeah.
This is why rookies struggle. They don't know when to pick their spots. In fact, the converse is true. Oftentimes they will play urgently when there's no reason to. And
that's college. College basketball is like just 80% effort all over, and it's like to no effect, right?
College basketball is bumper cars. Boop, 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 right? There was a couple of games. You guys know how much I love Scotty Barnes, and obviously he's had this great beginning, but he's also had a couple of moments where he's committed some of the dumbest fouls of all time because he brought urgency to a moment where if you play like that, they're just going to call a foul on you. Yeah. He's since recovered very well, but this is the name of the game. The rookies there's too many things going on. It'll slow down. And Jalen Green's a really talented player. I don't know if he'll end up being great or not. He certainly has a chance to be, more so than almost anyone in the draft. He's got a lot of work to do, and he's not being helped by his teammates. They're just as inexperienced in many cases he is. So the game's fast for all of them right now.
Okay, so you guys, if you're a parent of an athlete, you're crazy not to listen to David's Fireside Show. I'm listening because I'm a friend, but I'm constantly lapsing into like fan zone of just like, oh, this is so useful. Like it's just David's putting on a masterclass and just like how to raise your children so that sports is a positive force in their lives on and off the court, field, pool, whatever sport they do. Tomorrow, he's worked through like what you do with your 5-year-old. Got to middle school, and now tomorrow we're going to plunge into high school. David, what's on the show tomorrow?
Yes, thank you for your comments. Yeah, so we're gonna wade into the very treacherous waters of high school. I think middle school is the hardest school age for just students typically in America, but for sports, it's high school for sure for a million different reasons of which we'll be discussing. And I'm just going to try to give some ideas, at least for the next couple of weeks, on how best to use sports in high school as a way to connect with your kids better and get them on a better course, what to do when you see them getting off course, or if they're fine, but the team they join isn't fine. There's a lot. It's rough water. If rapids are, I think whitewater rapids or whitewater rafting, you can do it like 5 different numbers. Like if it's a number 5, it's a super fast and very dangerous course. High school is a 5 typically. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm going to try to help people. I'm going to try to help them how to get that life vest on them so they can survive and then potentially prosper. I'll have at least a guest or two on next week. This week, I may bring a guest on late, but mostly be me just kind of walking through. There's just so many variables, and then as they progress, which we'll talk about next week, into maybe being good enough to be a very good high school player. What are the costs to that? What are the taxes to that? As a family, to the individual. But again, the main point is we want sports to help us build bridges to our kids' hearts and vice versa, so that you can walk across them the rest of their lives. And if done right, it works out great. If done wrong, that bridge gets burned. And I want to try to help people avoid that.
And what I would say is like, okay, I'm talking to parents now, not you, David, because it's talking about you. But like, so all these different things happen in parenting, and mostly you're like, well, crap, that's complicated. What do we do about that? And so, for instance, David has a story about a friend whose daughter was just super good at soccer, and she scored all the goals. And I think the team was generally not that great. Is that right? But and you're like, and she could lose interest, and or she could be a jerk, right? I could see you get a big head out of that, and it's like, so what do you do about that? And like, my brain starts to like reflect, and you want to ask people, but David's just like, ask her about her teammates, ask her how her teammates are doing, make sure the teammates are doing better, and like that is genius. And he has it. I don't think you can stump him. I think you can bring up whatever parenting sports issue, throw it at him, and he's got like a 1 sentence. I've thought this through. This is what will work. Go try it. And like, did I tell your story right? That. Is that right?
I appreciate that. And the other thing I told him was my next door neighbor, Ken, was don't go to every game in practice, which is antithetical maybe, but it's already his daughter, Kendall, must have already felt like the world's greatest athlete at 12 years of age. And so because she's killing everyone on her rec center team, wasn't even club soccer. And so by not showing up all the time, I think it helped her get some perspective. That was my thought anyway, into like, yeah, you're beating up a bunch of kids who were there sometimes because mommy or daddy made them go. And then he had her sign up for club soccer and all of that. And it turned out she ended up being a high level college soccer player and Olympic development team and all of that. But yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you're almost 57. I've done a lot and seen a lot and listened. On Twitter the other day, Henry, two people asked me about what to do with their 10-year-old. One had a daughter. And I wrote back on Twitter, well, I don't want to do a long Twitter answer. Let's just talk. And people think I'm doing that because I'm a nice guy. The reality is I'll learn from them. There's always something you can learn from a parent who's in it, dealing with this right now. In this case, they were volunteer coaches. And who am I not to learn from everyone going through that? Because it'll come up again in my life. And so, yeah, I'm just always trying to learn. That's what coaches do. We got to always be learning. We haven't, as soon as we figure it out, we're lost.
When David says don't go to every game in practice, swim coach Gerard Hector in all caps in the chat, please don't.
That's funny. Yeah. To have the children already think, unless they're twins, as I've learned, that the world revolves around them. I just don't think that's the best thing for them. Let them know that mom and dad have lives too, and so do their siblings and their grandparents. I think it's good to be reminded of that a lot.
All right, so you nicely recommended that I briefly discuss the post from Friday, which late in the game I changed the name to Pablo Escobar in a Celtics hat because I found a picture of Pablo Escobar in a Celtics hat. Like, that's why that happened. There's the picture. It's like a corduroy snapback Celtics hat.
Yeah.
That hat, I was saying to somebody, I would listen to a 10-part documentary just about that hat. How did he get that hat? Why does he have that hat? Like, what's the deal? There's also, I don't know if you guys see this, there's also Pablo Escobar at Disneyland pictures, Disney World pictures, just with the family going on the rides. Like, I really before he was a notorious global criminal, really recommend checking that out. All right, so here's what this post is about. Antonio Maria Costa, head of the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, said he's seen evidence that after the global financial collapse in 2008, the only liquid investment capital available to some banks on the brink of collapse was from organized crime. And he uses this number, much disputed, $352 billion, that's a third of $1 trillion was absorbed into the economic system. So whatever the real number is, what I was writing about was that we make a mistake thinking this is like a one-day story, that this money flooded in and like, oh, there you go. Like, in fact, I think that like it affects a little bit how business happens, including perhaps the NBA every day. So Apollo Global, big source of money for the NBA and for Jeffrey Epstein, which led to its founder, Leon Black, stepping down earlier this year. Just last year, Leon Black was in Abu Dhabi and he bragged that one of his biggest business successes was helping line up the financing for an almost monopoly in the U.S. cable business when we were younger and overpaid for cable, David. He estimated they had 90% of the cable business. How did that one company get so big, right? And if you go read that story posted last week, you'll see that a key figure in a giant money laundering investigation had some very interesting things to say about basically shuttling tons of money to this cable enterprise, which at one point they called Cable Cosa Nostra. So I just go read it. It's kind of about that. And then coming up next in that series, you know how like foreign investors have like crazy amounts of money to buy sports teams, and we're like, oh yeah, that's right, oligarchs have that kind of money, or whatever it is. Just remember what I just said about where you can get a whole bunch of money from, and let's just connect that to like where's all this money coming from to buy soccer teams and basketball teams. Okay. We have completed the hors d'oeuvre portion of the show. David, how are you feeling? You ready for a little more? Are you hungry for the main course?
Well, no, I wanted to say one last thing regarding your article. Why don't you connect it to breaking news that came out this morning in the local papers? Because you're not the only person looking into this kind of stuff.
Hell no.
There aren't many of you that are really very public about it. But yeah, tell them what happened, came out today.
Yeah, so there's you probably remember, Bill Gates has had a hard time explaining the photos of him hanging out at Jeffrey Epstein's house. One of the other people in those photos is Jess Staley, who went on to become the head of Barclays and was for a long time a private banker. He made his career by having an explosive growth in JP Morgan's private banking, where Jeffrey Epstein was a client. And Jess Staley like visited Jeffrey Epstein at his various houses as much as anyone documented anywhere. And there were reports of Epstein like lobbying really hard for Jess Staley to get the job running Barclays years before he did get the job. So he's like one of the, if Jeffrey Epstein's influencing the financial markets and financial industry, like Jess Staley's kind of the poster child of it. And he, after Barclays, started poking around internal investigation, his Jess Staley's relationship with Epstein, he stepped down today, effective immediately. So there are going to be a lot of these. There have been a lot of these. Honestly, we don't know.
Yeah.
The list of CEOs with some kind of tie to Epstein who've stepped down, like, cause effect, can't say for sure, but like it's ridiculous. So, I think there's a.
And where do the Brooklyn Nets play their games?
I have wondered about this. Yeah.
About that. Isn't it the Barclays Center?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the CEO of this giant bank has bigger fish to fry than the naming rights for an arena in Brooklyn. But yeah, I mean, you got to ask all these questions now. Like,
right. This is my point.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we need to do if we want to really, if we to earn our love for the game and for the league. We'd like to know the flaws are small. Everything we love has flaws, but this is a big problem.
Well, and this is a sort of, to flip it on its head a little bit, if there were people who were good at keeping their funds clean, right? Not having, dirty organized crime money in your investment fund, whatever it is, we would probably be able to name the names of some people who were loudly proud about that, right? Like, who's the Wall Street figure who's like, oh, we don't have drug money here. No illicit arms sale proceeds here. Like we don't even have the lexicon for it. Like nobody talks that way that I found. I'm a sports writer. I don't know. What do I know? But it seems a little, it always alarms me. Like in running, they've been through a lot of doping stuff, and people, like athletes, are so proud they're clean. They'll finish the interview and they'll be like, I'm so glad I came in second. Like, cause that's really hard for a clean person. Like, and then like, and let's see if they take her medal away, right? Like they talk like this, they write clean on in marker on their arms for races. Like that's a culture where people are proudly clean. Like that basketball doesn't have that, and we'll never fucking discuss it. To me is like a 5-alarm fire of like, whoa, that means it's probably dirty, right? And so same thing in Wall Street. It's like, if you're gonna try and tell me, I'm sure I'll end up in these conversations with someone from Wall Street being like, no, like we have these good procedures, and it's like, well, does anybody feel proud of it? Proud enough to talk about it? Does anybody brag about it? Like, not that I've seen. Like, it seems like everyone's like, just get the fucking money. That seems to be more the ethos. It's like,
I had never heard you talk about that before. It reminds me, I don't respect this individual for many reasons, but Bobby Knight used to do that in terms of recruiting. He would flat out call coaches cheaters because he knew that's the one thing he didn't do. And he probably didn't have to. Indiana was, a top 5 program every year. There was a period of time where he was the best coach in the country or one of the 2 or 3 best. But yeah, he did that. And not a lot of other coaches ever said a word about it.
Yeah.
For the reason you're talking about. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Or they'll just say he's a crank, right? They'll just be like, oh, my, that's a cranky guy.
They just stayed quiet.
Yeah.
Like if John Calipari had been coaching 25 years ago, Bobby Knight would have been very outspoken about what he thinks John is doing, whether he was right or wrong. How does he know? But he was very outspoken about it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have got our work cut out for us schedule wise here. So significant differences in the structure of the game in the early going this year. It could all wash out, but so far, just Russo points out 3-point shooting percentages are way down this year. Their teams are combining to make 34.1% of 3-pointers, the lowest since 2000. Teams shot 36.4% the past postseason. Terrence Mann, he quoted saying that he thinks it's probably basically because people are tired. What do you think, David?
There's a lot to digest there. But I thought, this is something we've talked about, you, Gerard, and I on our shows and just regular conversations and texting. We were just now a year removed from 2 seasons ago.
Right.
They've crammed a lot. Not every team, like the Bulls didn't do anything in the bubble and everything, but I don't think Terrence Mann is wrong. And why would he's living it. But I also think that teams have evolved as the offensive onslaught grew, where more and more weaponized players from behind three were getting playing time, and more teams were experimenting going small, and more teams were looking for stretch guys who could guard the paint better, but also shoot threes. And there was more players that could do it. It's slowly we found defensive guys that can both protect the paint and not necessarily. You made a point to me the other day. You talked about Reggie Jackson's length. And I don't think he's a great defensive player, but he's long as hell.
He's long as hell. Yeah.
You can guard non-bucket getting bigs with a Reggie Jackson because of the length, more so than maybe ever before. And I think schematically, things like switching has allowed for teams to stay more connected to perimeter shooters. I think awareness, I would argue maybe that even more importantly than system and strategy in terms of defending three-point shooters, awareness would be the most important thing. The awareness of where the threats are and then prioritizing them is something that our brains take a while to do. Just like our immune systems have evolved, as I read about all the time regarding COVID and the previous hundreds of years. Well, it's not 100 years, but it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 where just the level of awareness, I said to you on the phone earlier, it's just always ingrained in basketball players from the time you're starting to play serious in 6th grade or whatever. You get home to the paint in transition defense because that's where the most damage can occur and the highest level of production and efficiency. Well, that's just not the case in the NBA. Maybe you got to race back to the paint if someone on the other team is racing to the paint. But if they're not, well, I got to find the shooters. And so it's been about 30 years of working with players to understand, to recognize, be aware of where the shooters are versus who's racing to the rim, and then decide who you're going to try to take away. And so they're just getting better and better and better. And I think all these things have combined to at least have not a great start for shooters this year. And maybe it also includes fatigue. It's fair to guess that for some of these teams anyway. And we'll see how things end up. But I do think that the decision to not call as many fouls, clearly it's been decided, at least we think that the evidence shows that, and watching games and players feel that for a good measure, maybe. All these things are happening to just, the defense is starting to win some battles now after losing a lot of battles the last couple of years. To finish that thought, Henry, I just read the Lakers' top defensive rating. They were the best defensive team last year based on defensive rating. They have a better rating this year, and they're 18th in the league. It's early, but there's just a lot more teams playing defense now.
And so I'm going to mangle like the findings of a bunch of smart people. Basically, like 3-point defense, statistically, team 3-point D has been kind of not a thing. It bounces around like free throw defense. It actually behaves about like that, right? Which means, of course, there isn't a free throw defense. Right. So like it's just noise, right? So through the years, that whenever a team looks like it's good at defending threes, really what's likely happening is they've been lucky that people have missed threes against them, right? Now, that doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case. And I think we might be, let's keep an eye on it. It's early, but we might be in a phase where team, as you're describing, like team awareness, right? Teams are getting much better at defending threes. A little kind of couple checks on that. One is, when the Warriors were scoring, 40% from three or close, you saw Steph open in transition, right? Like you could see that it happened a lot in my memory anyway. And you don't see that anymore. Like they're going to be with Steph, right? They're not going to run to the paint and then, oh, we forgot Steph and Curry, right? And I just looked up, I don't know, this is not something I know a lot about, but like there are a bunch of players right now in the early going who make a giant difference in the 3-point percentage of the person that are guarding. In the early going, we can roll through that, but like a lot of them are these super athletic, very long players. LeBron, Reggie Bullock, Rashawn Holmes, Gorgie Jang, James Johnson, Jackson Hayes, Jalen Brown, Alex Caruso, Markieff Morris. Like, now you see players like that with a hand on a hip and a arm up on the perimeter, right? Routinely. Like that'll affect your 3-point percentage, I would guess. It doesn't seem outlandish to think that's effective.
The studies that I've even had some of my people, Gerard's got stick cam. Yeah, that's Oklahoma City calls it a stick cam, but What the studies that friends of mine have looked into is more about the early high hand contest. These are things fans don't think about, but we like. I can't not see it. Well, Mark Jackson calls it hand down, man down. It's one of the few things I've really liked that he's said. He's right. The key is the early part,
right?
Because once a player is really committed to the shot, he almost won't see your contest,
right?
So get it up early, and you might take it away. He still might shoot it, but he's thinking about it. So I think that's a factor. And I think the second spectrum probably knows the answer. It's all about the percentage of contested threes. It's really the only thing you can shoot for defensively is, are you contesting the three the best way possible? That you can live with. That's a strategy. The strategy, there is no strategy of the other team's just going to miss. That's luck. The contest part is what you can control. That's your process. So I would guess there's a little bit of an uptick in that, and the teams are getting less open threes. I as an example, there's many I could talk about, but one would be, so if you're playing defense on a guy on the perimeter and someone shoots a three, it doesn't matter if it's your guy or not. What you can't do defensively is to run deep into the second box, almost where it reaches the first box, to get the rebound. Because if the other team gets the rebound, or meaning the offensive team, or it's a hard long rebound, you're going to struggle to get out there and contest the next three that's coming. You got to split the difference. You got to stay like in the higher parts of the second box, so that if they do get it and they kick it out, which is a great way to shoot a three, one of the two best ways to shoot a three, offensive rebound, you're in position to go find the biggest threat. I think more and more players are getting smart about that. Not enough. It's still a mistake made too often. It's something I definitely have to teach all the time. You can't overrun defensive rebounds against these three-point shooting teams. You've got to stay more connected to them so you can recover back out, which means the guys inside better rebound, because you can't help as much as a guard.
And it's been, subtle, and it was talked about a while ago. We should remember, like, there were a bunch of slow players, big men, who wouldn't run out to the 3-point line in the NBA 10 years ago, 5 years ago. You tell me when, but there just aren't a lot now, right? Like now, it just seen as now it's common sense. You just don't play those guys because they can't get where they need to get to play D, right? And that reality is going to affect things.
Right. Marcus Camby famously padded his defensive rebounding stats because he was not going to leave the paint.
Right.
This is his teams would talk about it.
They gave him Defensive Player of the Year for that.
And his opponents knew about it too.
Yeah.
And you could get away with it more then. You just can't now. There's too many. In addition to not being able to guard your own guy that can shoot the three, the Warriors are the best team to unlock the real shooter at the guard or wing spot, because they utilize their screener effectively. And if you're guarding the screen and you stay home, we call curl protect. You can't protect the guard coming off the screen to shoot the three. You've got to get up. You've got to have someone guarding that screener so that you can contest the shooter.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Now, this foul thing, Nick Friedel of ESPN, very nice guy, quotes Draymond Green. Draymond Green, you gotta love him for just going off on whatever's on his mind. He is so many years past caring. It's fantastic.
Awesome.
Yes, it is. He says, I kind of had stopped watching the NBA a bit because it was just too flailing and flopping and guys cheating the game and getting free throws. So I think that's been great. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that because it's been fantastic. You can 100% feel it because you don't have guys doing the garbage to try to draw fouls anymore. I think this game was turning into what can draw the most fouls. Nobody wants to watch that, and you definitely don't want to play in a game like that. So you can feel the difference out there for sure. It's just more pure basketball, and that's great for our game. And then Curry says, I've been watching around the league, and for the most part, it's a 9 out of 10 calls that used to go the other way are not, for good reason. Curry said there's probably some that are still in that gray area where they'll get more consistent, but it's great for the game. I know a lot of fans are loving it. The defensive-minded players are loving it. And for us to put the ball in the basket, focus on that. I've tried to my entire career, so I don't think it's a huge adjustment, but I like it. And then single out James Harden a little bit for some criticism as the maestro of this. This is a pretty big change.
Yeah. I watched the ESPN documentary on the New York Mets winning championship, which was where I went to school. There's a lot of transplanted New Yorkers, and I was in college. It was great. I remember that. And Doc Gooden is 20 minutes from where I grew up, whatever, not a little more than that. And there were a lot of fights, right? And I know that basketball too. It was just, guys just, I mean, I love Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He decked somebody with a punch to the face. And then of course the Malice in the Palace. We know there's a lot more than that. And so a lot of that was the culture of the sport. That's in basketball. There was just a lot more hard fouls. It was just a more physical thing. And that I think was too extreme. And then we went the other way, which is in the last 3 or 4 years where, James Harden could just kind of touch you a little bit and they would whistle a foul. And it was too, and
by the way, the foul would not be on James Harden, too.
Oh, right, exactly. and people like you have been preaching for a long time. It sounds great in theory because we're scoring more, but you're scoring more definitively because you're stopping the action and we're taking uncontested 15-foot shots in the age where everyone's got a cell phone or a tablet, and they're flipping to something else on the pause. It's not good for the sport. It's not good for ratings. And so I think they've kind of zigged back towards the more rough and tumble games, and they've got to walk this fine line. I happen to think they've done a magnificent job, with the exception of some calls and some plays, which no one can ever get right fully. I thought that players who are hoping to get fouled are not getting rewarded for that hope, for that prayer. And I think the games are more enjoyable. I agree with Draymond Green. Now they just have to maintain it.
So you can always trust the NBA to think about marketing and audience. And one thing that struck me reading this story that I was just quoting from, in the conference finals, maybe 2 years ago, I held my phone up to the screen, like recorded the last minute of Game 7. I don't remember exactly. There were 3 flops in the last 40 seconds of the game with the series on the line, and amazing flops. And what I thought I was seeing there was, super brilliant players like James Harden, Chris Paul, using their big brains and their super nature to do what gave their team the most benefit, which was to try to get the refs on their side, right? That was their calculation. They can use those big brains for anything, and it made more sense, more value to them to work the refs than to work for a bucket, right? But that tweet with a little video went about as big on Twitter as anything I've ever been involved in, but we looked at what was going on there. It was kind of racist. Trump fans loved it because it was seen as black guys cheating, right? They're lazy, they don't want to do the work. It became a kind of it took a whole nother crazy turn, right? And but I'm a little bit the NBA being seen in Trump land, a big part of America that way, is a business problem for the NBA, right? And part of me wonders that would happen. Not that they were watching my tweet, but I'm sure this isn't the only piece of feedback the NBA has on this front. I wonder if there's a little bit of America's racist history showing its head here, and just let's not have a bunch of video highlights of where it looks like people are cheating, right? This doesn't look good.
Oh man, of course, I understand what you're saying, and it's just very sad. It's really there's no one race that knows how to cheat better in sports. I know you're not claiming there is. There
is a racist tradition of the white Americans have historically loved the idea, racist white Americans, that black people don't do the work, right? This is a very comfortable one, right?
Right. This is what I'm saying is I have watched European soccer, which is largely, until more recently, very pale individuals fucking flopping everywhere in soccer because it's so valuable. If you get one penalty kick, it's hugely important in that ridiculous fucking sport that I somehow got involved in. But I think what you said initially is super accurate, which is just the whole marketing aspect of this. They have stumbled into, I think, a better product right now.
Yeah. Well, and they are a league that they had a very scary Malice in the Palace situation and responded by dress code with dress codes, right? They don't want to upset. They're not going to lecture these fans on racism, right? They're going to appease these fans on racism, right?
Right.
Anyway, okay. So we might have gotten a little bit off track there. Okay. The other sort of third part of our main course here is this interesting little thing about too much passing. Geraldo Vulgaris, fascinating man, former professional gambler who briefly ran the Mavericks and now is blabbing about running the Mavericks. He's pointing out that the Jazz 2019 3.14 passes per possession, and it's been steadily falling to 2.95 passes per possession. In the little follow-up, he mentions that each pass has a roughly 97% completion rate. So if you pass it 5 times, you have a 15% chance of turning it over. How about that, David? You're a coach. Having people talk crap about passing is like the worst thing you can do to David Thorpe, I would guess, right?
No, I think that, so Rick Adelman had this gorgeous offense for the Kings and the Rockets and even the Timberwolves when he had Kevin Love as his best player and Ricky Rubio as the point guard. But I think we can get too enamored with, and I argue with my buddy Ryan Pannone, who thinks the European style is, the holy gospel because of all the passing. And I just love to remind him, the idea is just to score. And so the art isn't in the game, it's in the winning, in my opinion anyway. And so I think as defense have evolved and we have more and more really long, athletic, quick guys that are playing the sport, and we've got guards with 7-foot wingspans all over the place, 6'2" guys with these gigantic wingspans. Yeah, the idea is to score and importantly, to play, to build systems around our talents. And so if you've got, in the case of Utah, Donovan Mitchell, and you've got Rudy Gobert, who's got a 7'9" or whatever it is wingspan that can jump to 13 feet, that high center pick and roll attacking downhill is a hell of a play. I've told you for years that I know in Quinn Snyder's case, the head coach of Utah, that he believed, and was quoted as such, that the more we pass, the more when people get touches, the more they'll be willing to defend. And I've always disagreed with that at the pro level. They get paid to play defense if they're not great offensive players, and that should be enough. But I can't argue with Utah's success defensively, although I think it was mostly because of Rudy Gobert and not because the ball is passing around so much. But I think that these coaches have got to find ways to win games. And it's not about how pretty they can run stuff. And as team speed, Henry, defensively increases because you have no choice, that Brad Miller in today's game would really struggle. Brook Lopez has improved his agility. You have no choice. You're covering so much ground. And so because of that, and there was a great Miami Heat possession that's going all over the place on Twitter as this incredible ball movement, and it was beautiful. But they barely got a shot off. That's what no one was talking about. This gorgeous offense that scored 3 points on the possession almost didn't even get a shot off because they were looking for good to great, but defense was racing all over the place too. And it almost was a disastrous possession. That's a fine line. And so I think it'd be smart to just let's not get close to the 24-second clock too much, because if we can't get a shot off, by definition, it's a disastrous possession. So I think it's an interesting balance that you got to try to shoot for.
I always feel like, fairly commonly, the first or second person to touch the ball in possession will have just a half step in a scoring position and pass it up. And I'm always like, ooh, like, I don't know if you're going to get that again. Like, you guys might do a whole bunch of stuff and we'll just not get someone as good as you in a spot as good as that. Right. And it just feels like the basketball gods kind of wants you to take that, I think.
Well, this goes to Jackie McMullen's great article about summertime, the San Antonio Spurs. What I had posited was the Miami Heat had the fastest defense in the league because they had Chris Bosh at 5. They went small. And LeBron and Dwayne Wade, who are as fast of players as so Bosh, Wade, LeBron are as fast as anyone we've ever seen playing their positions. Mm-hmm. Bosh at the 5, not the 4. And I thought the Spurs decided, we are not going to fucking play good to great anymore. Mm-hmm. Let that motherfucker fly. Mm-hmm. And Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard in particular were shooting early offensive threes because it's like wrestling this gigantic snake. If you do what you just said and pass that shot up early, you may not get a shot up later. And we can't win any games we give multiple 24-second violations. We got to get a shot up because then we also have a chance to get a rebound too and another possession. And so, yeah, I think, again, as coaches, the idea is not to have them execute your beautiful offense. Let's run an offense and make sure we get shots every time. Yeah. And we also have more skilled players than ever. Evan Mobley is a 20-year-old rookie 4'5", 5'4", who can dribble it and pass it and shoot a little bit. He can attack a little bit. We have more guys like that coming every year. Scotty Barnes, same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the main course. We're still back on schedule. I feel pretty good. Gerard, maybe you want to join us for the dessert. Gerard's got a terrible diet. I mean, he just skipped the hors d'oeuvres in the main course.
Speaking of diet, our first topic is good. Nicely done.
I do in fact like lots of dessert, so that's true. But I make sure I work to avoid the pitfalls of eating too much dessert.
That's why we work out, I always say. So
you're a very healthy guy. You're a very careful eater, but what would be worth cheating for? Like, what would be the dessert that would really get you going?
I mean, I eat. So there's a bakery here in the city called Levain, and I eat their humongous marathon-inducing. That's what they were created for by ultra marathon people. So they're 530 calories a piece. I mean, I eat one of those every night.
Wait, really?
Yeah, just about, or at least half of one.
What exactly is it? Like, what's in there?
So they have the dark chocolate peanut butter. They have the Q-chip. It is a cookie like the size of your face, but it's like fat. It's great, but it's fine.
There was a time when we were talking about desserts and parenting and healthy kids and blah, blah, and David basically said that he fully banned his kids eating dessert. And he basically, I'm like, oh, so you eat dessert anymore? He's like, oh, fuck that. I eat dessert every night. Just have to go to bed.
I don't remember that, but it very much sounds like me for sure. Yeah. We grew up in a household of dentists. So my papa and my uncle. And so it was always frowned upon. But as an adult, I got to make my own rules, damn it.
All right, so awkward transition because I really do feel bad there's a little video of last week. It has like 1.5 million views already of Zion Williamson just trotting around doing a little shuffling, and everybody's making fun of. He looks pretty big. Oh
man,
what do we make of this, David?
Well, his ass looks huge, which in basketball tends to be something really good. The Kyle Lowry has made a whole bunch of money with that big old butt. We really do stress using all parts of our body that aren't our hands because they tend to call fouls on that. However, his movement was terrible. So separate from the weight, he looks, I think some reports that he had surgery. I don't know. The whole thing's a mystery, guys. Exactly what's wrong. How long's he out for? What happened to begin with? What have you done to resolve the problem? We don't know a lot of this. All we know is that video he looked months away. And I'm the idiot who thought he could be MVP. Well, not at that weight, not at the way he's moving. He was not moving as a healthy guy trying to get back in shape. It's a problem. And you cannot let yourself get looking like that when you're injured. It's just going to slow the process even more upon returning because you're not just recovering from the rust of not playing, but your body isn't ready. And it's bad for the Pelicans. He'll end up being fine, guys, because he plays with a good motor, but it's going to be delayed. It seems to me anyway.
Sorry. Go ahead, Henry.
No, the story of this hasn't been told yet, but there have been so many little whisper network signs that like what the team has in place hasn't been working. His off-season regimen with his family and friends and the Team Zion hasn't there isn't the people who know how to handle these kind of situations have not earned his trust, and the program is bad. And we're looking at like a player with just has the potential to be the best player in the history of the game, and we're watching things go very awry very quickly, and it feels a little scary.
Oh, I'm with you. I think something that you touched on and Coach touched on just now. What's concerning to me about this is how we don't know anything. And I don't mean it in the sense that like we're important sports writers, so we should know everything about everything. Zion's a CAA client. How the hell did we not know until September that he broke his foot in the summertime?
Yeah.
What the hell? What's happening? Like Woj, Mr. CAA, how did that not come out? I mean, that could be why, right? Like, what? How do we not know this information? And then, the whispers about, is he going to stay? And New Orleans constantly doing everything to make sure that he does whatever he does what he wants down there so that he does stay. It's all bad to me. And, 3 coaches in 3 years. Look, what is he, 23? 24? I don't know.
It seems like a quiz. I'm not.
He's super young, but I worry about that. 3 injuries in 3 years. And at that size, like, you have to have a specific program in place for someone like him. And to Henry's point, whoever's doing it needs to earn his trust. Now, I don't know how you earn his trust if Team Zion is the gatekeepers around Zion.
Yeah.
You got to work through them. I don't know how you earn their trust. No idea. But I think this is the problem that New Orleans is facing right now, is that the communication between what they want and what is good for Zion is not penetrating and getting to him. And they're not sure how to communicate in the right language to get the trust they need. And that is a problem.
Well, and then Taylor in our chat asked a great question. Thank you, Taylor. He wrote, how much of this is on him and or the team? And the answer is, it's all on Zion. Not in terms of recovery, because that's not what his expertise is in. But as someone who's had it, I mean, my son broke his ankle. I had one conversation with him about, hey, you're out months. So let's be smart about our eating. And you can't run on a broken ankle. You can't do anything. So if you walked into my son's room in the afternoon, pretty much every day of the week for those months where he was limited to doing nothing but sitting in a chair and work on his handle, of which I would go chase the ball when he'd lose it, which was all the time. You would see him doing crunches of every type possible, because that's all he could do. And he wasn't eating dessert, and he wasn't eating fried food. And he was 17 years old. Zion Williamson knows what he's supposed to do. This part is not rocket science. Clearly, he's choosing not to do it. And whoever, to Henry's point about lacking trust, whoever has been talking to him, because I'm sure someone's been saying, hey, like, we got to stop with the sweets or whatever. He might be eating super healthy and just too much of it, to be fair. Like, you can eat nothing but really healthy foods, but if you take in more calories than you burn, you're going to increase your weight. It doesn't look like that's his issue. It doesn't look like great weight. He can lift weights. He has the ability to do a lot of things. This is on him. And he's going to find out there's going to be a tax to this when he gets back. He's not going to be the player he was, which was the guy that I thought could be MVP. So he'll get back to it at some point, I would guess, but it's all a mess right now.
I'm going to guess that his whole life, people have been tutting him about his diet, right? And, some coach, some whatever. And he's been like, what do you, person at the next table in the restaurant or assistant coach of some AAU team, whatever, like, what do you know about this, right? Like, and he's crushed everybody without really pinning down this thing, right? And like, it's going to be probably hard for him to take on the idea at 23 that like the salad people were right all along. You know what I mean? like he's proved them wrong so many times.
I mean, he crushed the NBA last year when he was healthy, right? So he's like, what do you people know about that? I'm fine. What?
Yeah. It's I mean, we all learn as adults. The league is a hell of a teacher. These rookies, I watched Cade Cunningham. I know we'll get to him next.
Segue right away. Let's do it.
So Cade Cunningham, who I had as the 3rd best player in this draft, which is still pretty damn good. It's a very good draft. He played his first game and he was terrible. What do you expect? This is John and I talked about this a lot last Friday. This is the best league in the world by a lot. It's really hard. And they're really trying now, as opposed to the preseason where rookies look great. And we were saying, let's curb our enthusiasm a little bit. Like, guys are trying now, and they're actually getting scouting reports and everything else. And Cade, I mean, I'm telling you, if you had access to Synergy, or could just watch it on YouTube, whatever, and just watched all of his missed 3-point shots.
5 of them.
Might have been 5. Yeah. Like it was Brick City, we call it. Like people would say back in the 80s, you could build a shopping mall with those bricks. Mm-hmm. Like, these are the things we would say. And I used to do a lot of TV back then. So
who wants to shop in a 5-brick mall?
Listen, these are some big fucking bricks, okay? Like, they were bad misses. These were not in and out. These were never closes.
Yeah.
Never close. And I think he had 2 points in the game. Is that right?
He had 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers, and 2 points.
Yeah, it's hard. So that's my point about Zion. Just to finish that thought is like you're not going to be Zion at this weight. Zion's magical power is superhuman athletic ability in a gigantic frame. So if you have the gigantic frame and not the superhuman athletic ability, and I'm talking about quickness too, not just jumping ability, and very skilled, you're just not going to be nearly as good. Well, Cade Cunningham doesn't have superhuman athletic ability. I tell you what he does have, though. He's huge, and I mean it in a good way, not fat huge.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen him on an NBA court because he hasn't played an NBA court. I watched him this morning on Synergy. That's a big fucking man who's a point guard. Same as Scotty Barnes. Like, I don't even know that Cade can eventually play some 4 or 5 defensively. He's not quite as big as Scotty, but it's close. He's a big dude. Jason Tatum big, which is the guy I mostly compare him to. He's a little different player in the way he plays, but if he can learn to shoot like Tatum had learned, he probably handles it better than Tatum does even now. He's a very intriguing prospect. He's not a great athlete, though, and it's going to be a while for him. He can't just do what Zion did and just overwhelm these guys physically. That's not going to be his thing in terms of athleticism.
And then he didn't play against the Nets. I don't know if they announced that in advance that he wouldn't do back-to-backs, but
I didn't hear it.
I didn't.
Yeah. So he played poorly. He sprained his ankle in the preseason and has been out a lot.
Yeah.
And then he sat it out, and then afterwards they're like, "Oh, that was always the plan, that he wasn't going to play back-to-backs for a while." And I was like, was that the plan? Like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But
we don't know.
No.
But I think it'd be wise. I mean, you need him for the whole season, and they're terrible.
They're terrible anyway, right?
They have their draft pick coming up, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Back
Yeah,
in
so-
Queensland.
I thought they do.
Sounds like a quiz.
So you're saying this is some just big old tanking going on here?
No, they don't have to try to tank. They're tanking.
They're not good.
They're just really young. And Cade is not just playing pure point guard. They drafted Killian Hayes, whose family's from here. He played in France, where his dad played college pro ball. He's playing a lot of the lead guard position, which is good for Cade too, I think, to not just have the pressure of only being the point guard. But they're just going to be terrible. And maybe on Friday, Gerard, you and I could talk about where Jeremy Grant should go.
I was going to say, is Jeremy Grant trade bait now?
Yeah, it's got to be. He chose Detroit for reasons that he's said publicly. Caleb mentioned Knicks, and he'd be good in the Knicks. He's good on a lot of teams. He's one of my favorite players.
Well,
they're going to be back.
I have another segue here. Jeremy Grant is minus 16 in net rating. If you're tanking, you might want to keep him. You know what I mean? So if we're looking at the early, what I'm not saying is that net rating is an important predictor of the future, right? For this small sample size of games. But it is interesting to know that the team is minus 11 when John Morant's on the court. Luka minus 12. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander minus 17. And what we really want to talk about, and by the way, Kyle Lowry plus 21.1.
Well, a lot of that might have come. What was the game where they won by 105?
Ooh.
The Heat had won. Was it Dallas? Was it Dallas or Charlotte? They killed the team. Yeah. That helps in a 5-game season.
Yeah, I think just
when you're up plus 80 in a game.
It does, but it also predicts future success. Like, those big wins are important. Like, good teams win big. Like,
those net ratings are interesting, Henry, because I've been watching a lot of Grizzlies games. And Coach, while Ja has been excellent offensively, and we've seen it, there is something I'm watching when he's on the floor and they're playing defense. It's just not all quite connected, particularly at the point of attack, which is him.
Yeah. It's hard to be small for starters, right? A lot of these players with bad net ratings are small. But I think it's also, he's just not a great defender.
No. And so the Mitchell kid, Davion Mitchell, Davion Mitchell for the Kings is really good on the ball, really bad off the ball, but he can learn off the ball. The on the ball part's really hard too. They're both equally hard. Morant's bad everywhere. Defensively, I mean, he's very most exciting player in the league. But he's got, he always is going to struggle on the ball. He's just so slight. Maybe struggle is the wrong word. He could be average at best, but off the ball, he could be much better. He could also be more of a chaos creator if they challenge him to be that, because he's so quick and fast. They haven't figured out that. And he's also learning it's hard to be the man on offense, and he's the man now.
This is where they're missing Dylan Brooks because they led the league last year in steals and forcing turnovers, right? As a defense. and Dylan's active hands and all that, like that's not there. And as a backcourt mate, that's a perfect mate to have with Ja, who struggles. So I think with having Melton and Bane, it's not quite the same thing.
So if you're just listening to the podcast and not able to see the chat, it's just the word bing bong again and again. That's
what does that mean? I can hear Will Ferrell saying it in one of his movies. Bing bong.
Oh no, this is a Knicks thing, coach. This is
really?
Oh man, when they won that double OT game against the Celtics, I told you the city was like on fire. Like, so there was this crazy viral video you can find it on the internet.
It's the angriest Knicks fan collection you've ever seen. Like,
and they're just like so hyped up the double overtime win, and this guy randomly in the middle of it pops on and goes bing bong, and then and you're like, what? But that's the internet, right? Like, why is that the thing that is like hilarious, and everybody's like, this is the thing now? And so bing bong that's it. It's bing bong.
So the surprise of the plus minus story is that there is a player who's historically very good in this net rating, and on a very good team. Obviously, it helps me a good team with your net rating. Who's terrible, which is Chris Paul. He's minus 12 or in the early going, which does seem a little bit of an alarm bell goes off with that one, right?
I watched him though this morning, and they beat the Cavaliers. They were getting beat up by the Cavs, and he definitely had a very good second half, maybe even three quarters. They came back and won, which right now is a nice win. Cleveland's pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought he looked good, more importantly, as the game went on. We got to see. He definitely had a slow start, as has James Harden, who then went for 19 free throws, Gerard.
Sure
Friday, back to 3, I think, last night. And Henry talks about Durant's ejection. Henry, why don't you set up Gerard to talk about
what do you? Yeah, I don't. Kevin Durant's been around a long time. I don't think anything's like new to him anymore, but there's this moment. It's a fairly boring moment of a game where he's going to streaking down the right wing and he's going to make a beautiful, probably a 3. And TJ McConnell just fouls the heck out of him in kind of an aggressive way. Annoying little TJ McConnell. And Kevin Durant just immediately just throws the ball in like the 30th row. And here's my question for you, Gerard. True or false? In that moment when Durant's cocking the ball back, he is already anticipating this fine.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah,
he already knows. Yeah. He already knows.
Yeah. Do you think he has the number? He knows it's about 25. Is that what he's thinking?
I'm sure he does, but when you have made hundreds of millions of dollars in your career, you're like $25,000 is like $10. So it's like
yeah.
This is a little like I'll buy like a car. Yeah, like it's worth it. Like,
I mean, a crappy car for him, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, he got tossed from yesterday's game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For, elbow shoving Olynyk.
Yeah.
And what did he say afterwards?
I don't know what he said after.
I thought he admitted that he did not think he extended it as much as he did. He may be lying, but I like that I thought I read a quote from him saying, okay, maybe I did it too much. Like he wasn't a jerk about it.
Well, one of the things that, and it's, everyone knows this about his career. What he doesn't like is when guys get super, super physical and into him, like, and are bumping him away from the ball. And it's like, dude, like, particularly in a regular season game. And Olynyk was doing that in that game. And I think that was like a frustration, like, dude, just chill out. Like, right. And that's what that was. And then Olynyk does the whole embellishment and blah, blah, blah. And then
Hey, Gerard, after this last game, Harden said he feels like he's really close to being back. Again, he only had 3 free throws yesterday after having 19 on Friday, of which of the 9 times he drew fouls for 19 total free throws, 4 were fucking very, very soft calls. 3 against Duarte, the rookie, which is part of the deal.
We're gonna get that call.
Nothing wrong with James Harden taking advantage of the fact that his rookie guarding him, but they were. I don't know that he's that close to being back. He still looks kind of heavy to me. Those soft gray uniforms don't hide his extra layer the way the dark ones do. What do you think? You watch him closely.
I think a few more weeks still. I think another 2 to 3 weeks, and he'll be rounding himself back into James Harden.
Is that the verb you wanted?
He wasn't. I did not think he looked fat. Like Zion looked really bad, but Harden doesn't look lean, and he looked lean before.
He'll be sculpting his way back into shape.
Chiseling down,
sweating his way back. Yeah, we'll have to watch. We know this as you get older. You just have less great days than you did when you were younger, but you still have great days.
Oh, here it is, Coach.
Closing with the bing bong.
Bing bong. Tommy Little, KB. Don't you
He just bing bong. It's out of nowhere.
Fans just make no sense to me.
I love like young people today are mystifying to me, but I love that they love that. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. It is time. Bing bong, everybody. Thank you, David. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Gerard. See you guys. Come to David's thing tomorrow on Fireside.
Noon. Be safe.
Noon o'clock.